the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. In this edition of the podcast, we will hear selections from Reflections by Idries Shah. This audio has been made available by the Idries Shah Foundation. The Scholar and the Philosopher. A scholar went one day to see a practical philosopher to determine the origins of his system. As soon as the question was asked, the master handed the academic a delicious peach. When it had been eaten, the master asked whether he would like another. The scholar ate the second peach. Then the philosopher said, "Are you interested in where this peach was grown?" "No," said the scholar. "That is your answer about my system," said the master. Suggestion and attention. The effect of a suggestion tends to be in proportion to the prestige of the source of the suggestion. Prestige is itself accumulated attention, accumulated and frozen attention. Attention fixing does not require the presence of the object. It may even occur, develop, and become fixed through the absence of the object. Dragon. "It is a dragon, destroyer of all," cried the ants. Then the cat pounced and caught a lizard. Understanding. One cannot guarantee human understanding, but one can help to develop it. You can, however, enable others to understand only very little further than you yourself understand a thing. This is why the human heritage of study materials is so underused. The instructors are passing on only what they can, not what there is. Understanding one level of materials is only a stage in passing to other levels. To compromise with one's ignorance by assuming that there is no higher level is a serious weakness. It holds back others, causes one to confuse the vehicle with the content, and is a disguised operation of self-esteem. To believe that higher understanding is something which is not available to ordinary men is a mixture of the pessimist culture's bequest and, paradoxically, self-esteem again, manifested in, "If I don't understand it, there is nothing to understand," and "If I don't like it, it is of no use." Time. Two microbes said, "We may not seem to be much, but just you wait a little." Melons and Mountaintops. If someone says to you, "Do melons often grow on mountaintops?" do you imagine that this is bound to be an attempt to add to the questioner's stock of information, and that he is interested in melons and the tops of mountains? Those who do not take such remarks as intended literally, interestingly enough, hardly ever go beyond the assumption that they are anything else than possibly meaningless or rhetorical. The valuable thing about this illustration is that it shows how people can apply just three possible interpretations: literal, meaningless, rhetorical. They certainly have the capacity to examine statements from other angles, but, since they have not been taught how to do so, they are not able, because too lazy to adopt any other viewpoint, even experimentally. Cat and dog. A cat and a dog were fighting. A man asked them what they were doing. They said, "The winner will decide which of us is a rat." "You are both wrong," said the man. So they set upon him and put him to flight. Curse and blessing. In the Middle East, one of the major blessings, which is also a curse, can be found in the commentaries of the teachings of spiritual masters. They are blessings for those who receive them at the right time, and curses for those who ever since have struggled with them after they became anachronistic. Few people would eat a piece of meat after it has rotted, or a vegetable when it has become a fossil. But almost none has yet learned about the equivalent problem in literature and traditionalism. Let something become known as valuable or sublime, and people's greed will do the rest. Even if the fossil breaks their teeth and the putrid meat poisons them, they will stick to outdated commentaries. Dogs and jackals. A man out hunting sent his yellow hound after something lurking behind a tree. The dog chased out a jackal and headed him into a position where the hunter could shoot him. The dying jackal said to the hound standing over him, "Have you never heard the Persian proverb, 'The yellow dog is brother to the jackal'?" "I have indeed," said the dog, "but you are rather out of date. Brotherhood to the more civilized is connected with training and identity of interest." Man and hero. Man really is a hero. Everywhere you will find him struggling for freedom and opposing its curtailment. Yet very often he is obviously struggling for his own enslavement at the same time and with equal force. To be obsessed by the idea of freedom, for instance, is itself a form of slavery. Such people are in the chains of the hope of freedom, and are therefore able to do little else than struggle with them. What I am. A man sat in his room thinking to himself. He said aloud, "I am what I can make myself. What a challenge! What vistas! What opportunities!" A piece of crumpled paper lying in the corner heard him. It said to itself, "How excellent to know that my own sentiments are shared by others. This is indeed an inspirational situation." Taboos, totemism, image building. It has been fashionable for some time now for investigators to delight in observing and reporting on the local manifestation of these things. It is useful to offset the parochial nature of most of such studies by remembering that these peculiarities are conspiracies to which the entire human race is party. Observation indicates that taboos, totemism, and image building are tendencies strongly evidenced in the theories, actions, and exegetics of those who believe that they are only describing them. Demonstration. It is narrated that Mullah Nasruddin was once trying to walk along the top of a very high wall, which was only about 3 inches wide. The crowd had gathered as he climbed to the top. When he fell down and twisted his ankle, people rushed up to him to find out what he had been doing. "I have been demonstrating," said Nasruddin, "that you cannot walk along a high wall which is exceedingly narrow without falling and twisting something." Function of religious symbols. When you see a traditional religious symbol today, you are generally looking at a piece of technical apparatus, or a representation of one, whose use has been forgotten, above all by the descendants of its own original designers. This is generally due to a growth of the superstition that a thing of beauty, or associative significance, has to evoke sentimentality, and that function is less sublime than emotion. The reverse, in fact, is the case. A motto of the human race. Let me do what I like, and give me approval as well. Unreliable friends. You need not wonder whether you should have an unreliable person as a friend. An unreliable person is nobody's friend. Genius. Genius, which means transcendent capacity of taking trouble, Thomas Carlyle, died 1881, and genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, Thomas Edison, died 1931. Ignored, or suppressed, in these dicta is a major characteristic of genius. Both leave out the question of manner. With these prescriptions, you will not get genius. Genius, in order to operate, needs the knowledge of manner.
What a horse! There is a certain kind of horse that beats all others for speed. It certainly gets you there. When, however, it skids to a halt, the rider is thrown over its head and usually cracks his skull. The answer to a fool. The proverb says that the answer to a fool is silence. Observation, however, indicates that almost any other answer will have the same effect in the long run. Duty. No duty is ignoble. What can be ignoble is the sight of people trying not to be ignoble. Both sides. To see both sides of a problem is the surest way to prevent its complete solution, because there are always more than two sides. Communication. For a long time now, people have been claiming that what is wrong with society is that there is a failure of communication. Many of these have had nothing to communicate other than the assertion that they cannot communicate. They have communicated this effectively enough. Power. People say, because the phrase attracts them, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Acton, 1st Baron, died 1902. Original version, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. There is no worse heresy than that the office sanctifies the holder. This, however, neither eliminates nor makes comprehensible powerful people. The would-be righteous man should be able to taste the power-endowed man's feelings. Instead of being nauseated by the following, he should be able to perceive it. Power is delightful to those whom it delights. Absolute power to them would seem absolutely delightful. Generosity and wisdom. How are generosity and wisdom connected? Here is one way. A generous person may not have wisdom, but unlike others, he has the means to gain it. Exaggeration. Exaggeration is a standard peculiarity of man. To deprecate is often a form of exaggeration which people do not notice, because it appears to be its opposite. When advice exceeds its function. Advice is priceless. When it becomes interference, it is preposterous. Saying a thing. It is not important to have said a thing first or best, or even most interestingly. What is important is to say it on the right occasion. Opinion. Opinion is usually something which people have when they lack comprehensive information. Myth and man. Man is a myth maker. Myth, when manipulated by unregenerates, is an even more effective man maker. Man, as he imagines himself to be, in general is a possibility, not a fact. For most people, the sort of man whom they imagine to exist, or assume themselves to be, does not yet exist. Credulity. Learn to be as analytical about things of which you are credulous as you are of those which you criticize. Pessimist. An egocentric pessimist is a person who thinks that he hasn't changed, but that other people are behaving worse than before. Affronted man. A man who, quoting the time from a clock which has run down, has this pointed out to him by someone else. That is an affronted man. Shut doors. People often say that a door to something is, or has been, shut. Do they, however, go so far as to investigate whether it has been locked as well? When you really face a problem and see it clearly, you realize that it is not the door and its shutting which are significant, but the presence and condition of a lock. This is one reason for informing the pessimist cultures which imagine that their heritage is optimism and constructive response to challenge, that they need vision. A response based upon inadequate data is not a response.
This podcast is copyright 2016, the Idries Shah Foundation.